Oh,
It's their world. We just play in it.
yeah. Hang on, I got to go pick up my printed rundown. Be right back.
Go get your printed rundown. Suncast. I was just thinking about that. What about my AOL and Roadrunner email addresses? My yahoo.com.
MySpace.com.
Yeah, there you go. Is it really? Yeah, I hate doing that because it's like I just want to have, my main email system in and out and everything else, and just, um I go in and create those aliases, and then just use the actual same MX record on all the domains. I have a Gmail account, but that's just I don't actually send anything else to it. I give out that address, and that's kind of it's like my junk address when I sign up for things, or create orders for stuff. I just use that address. Or Mac has, again, part of iCloud Plus, hide my email, and it creates a disposable email address for you, which is great.
Well, when I send out, I give people my email address. It's Kirk. It's kharnack plus spamola at gmail.com.
Oh, yeah, Kevin Cecil showed me that. He does that when he. Yeah, when he goes to when a restaurant or something wants your email address, he'll do that. His email plus and then whatever he's doing. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I play with email a lot. I used to run my own server at home until I realized that's really stupid. Because it's like I don't really need to do it, and I don't have the proper infrastructure at home to really have uptime and everything else. So why bother? Right. There's nowadays. I mean, nowadays everybody's using Microsoft 365 or Google Suite or whatever to do their email, because there's really no reason to do it on your own anymore. It just almost takes up resources.
Yeah. And then when you pass on, your relatives don't know what to do with it.
Well, and I'd much rather have it be somebody else's problem.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's plenty of people, though, who would say, well, I want to be in control of everything, I don't
and there's some, stuff. I get it. I always, I still have that shirt sitting around somewhere that says the cloud is just somebody else's computer.
Yeah.
Which is the truth. I mean, it's a computer somewhere.
But when I was in Next computer.
Yeah. Well, when I was with Next Media, I was in charge of their email server for the whole company. And back then, there was no third party. You did run your own. And I used MDaemon, which is a great program, but it is a pain, managing that stuff.
Okay. We are all distributed.
Yay. I did get out on our Teams chat at work and let everybody know that, so we might get one person watching, which would be good.
All right. Let's see. Here we go. We're almost at the top of the hour.
Yay. Here we go. Strap yourself in. Let's light this candle.
I've never delivered this to you because it got sent back or killed.
Oh, okay.
You need a reminder of what you're talking about today?
No. Probably what I'll do is kind of in the opening, kind of describe how why I have these sayings and that kind of thing. And then we'll go into it. And I know I sent Suncast a couple of pictures.
So at Telos, we had Steve Churchisms like, it's like nailing Jello to a tree.
I know, that's one of my favorite Steve-isms. I've heard that one a lot over the years.
It's like herding cats.
Yeah, that one I use a lot, actually.
And there was when you're talking to Steve and you finally figured out what he was saying and you spit it back to him. He would say, yes, 3 yeses.
Then you knew you're on the right track.
That's right. In fact, I got a little short story to tell, and I'll make it really short. Okay, let's get on with the program. It's top of the hour. Hey, everybody watching on the network live. We're glad you're here, and I really am glad you're here. We're about to do This Week in Radio Tech. It's our 790th episode. In 10 short weeks, we'll be at number 800. I gotta.
I remember number 1.
Yes. Let's see. When is 10 weeks from now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it'll be after NAB 9, 10. It'll be mid-May.
Sweet.
Mid-May.
I got to be there for that one.
800. Yeah, please do. Please do. All right. I guess we better get going here. Episode 790. And here we go in 3, 2. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower. Howdy, I'm Kirk Harnack. So glad that you're here. And I get to have my hour and a half of super fun every week right now. It's Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time, 5 Eastern, and 2 p.m. over on the West Coast. Nobody ever mentions Mountain Time, do they? That's a shame. There's a lot of beautiful places in Mountain Time. So it's 3 p.m. Mountain Time. And we're here for our 790th episodes. And there was a time on this show where we reserved every 10th episode, the decade episode numbers, we reserved them for an In the Trenches episode. We would talk about, slogging it out with transmitters and towers and studio equipment and, cranky prima donna personalities. That is the disc jockeys. And we talk about that. And we haven't really done that in a long time. It just hasn't always worked out to do that way. But today we have a kind of a variation on In the Trenches. And because you got to be in the same trench with Chris Tarr to participate with these In the Trenches, or at least to find out about them. You can take these ideas home with you and use them yourself. And so without giving away too much of the surprise, let's bring in our guest and co-host, Chris Tarr. Chris, welcome in.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Live here from the K-Love, Wisconsin office, which is a mess right now. So good to be here. We're going to talk about some things that probably, not probably, I hope will actually help you on your day-to-day stuff.
Yep, day-to-day. Because one of the things about I guess the title of our show is about docisms. Chris Doc Tarr. Okay, that's part of your pen name, Doc, and these are docisms. So these are phrases that either are directly attributable to you or ones that you have very stealthily stolen and made them yours.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I really have a passion for is mentoring. I started was very instrumental in starting the SBE mentorship program. I'm a mentor at my church. It's not just, engineering things that I mentor. I was very blessed to have worked for some very good business leaders. And over the years, have picked up a lot. Mentoring, not just for engineering, but mentoring management, mentoring, all kinds of things. And it really has been a pleasure. I really have a passion for that. I love being in the field. I love playing with toys, but I also love creating and leading a great team. And over the years, I've had plenty of mentees, and on the engineering side, I've come up with a few phrases that I like to use. And the phrase docisms comes from my nickname, Doc, which was very lovingly given to me years ago for two reasons. One, because they think of me as a professor, so Dr. Tarr, and then, of course, Doc Tarr, doctor. So kind of a twofold thing. So over the years, I've come up with these sayings, and they've kind of turned into what people call docisms. And, I try to get... I try to lead teams. I try to get people, kind of bring out the best in people. I'm sure most of my coworkers at this point at K-Love are tired of seeing my posts every week. I try to go in and do some motivational things. But, I really, I think that people are good, and you've known me since we both had dark hair, probably 25 years now at least. And, you know me, I'm always a positive person. And I really, when I eventually pass and I go home, I don't want people to say he was a good engineer. I don't care. There are a lot of great engineers. Most of them are better than me. Uh, what I want people to say is, he was a good human being. He helped me. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today are things that really, not only do they help you in engineering, but they help you in life. And really, that's what it's all about. I know with church, I mentor men to be better, spouses, better employees, better leaders. And so I pass those nuggets on, and that's really, I have a passion for that. And like I said, my coworkers will tell you, I'm a field engineer, but I'm always coming up with things to kind of rally the troops and get them going. Because again, when you build a great team, there is nothing better. And I think everybody is capable of that. I mean, there are some who just aren't a good fit or whatever, but as a leader, we need to develop these people to be part of that winning team. And I think everybody can do that. It's how you lead them. And when I come up with these docisms, they're very easy to digest little things that remind you of things that make you successful. Because I want to see my teammates succeed. And that's, the whole thing with my almost weekly messages in the K-Love chats is I want to see people succeed. Even if I have nothing to do with it, if I can inspire somebody to do something and become better people, better workers, whatever, and heaven knows I am not at all perfect. In fact, one of the things I'm going to be writing in a week or two is going to be opening up and being very vulnerable and explaining my biggest failure at work and how I overcame that. So I believe it's very important to give people the tools they need to succeed and then let them go. I've had in my time, and I miss a little of this, having come from a VP position, I had a staff, and I do kind of miss the team building. But I had one assistant who went on to be VP of engineering at Leighton. I had another assistant who went on to start a business that's very successful. And I have a third assistant who now is a very successful field engineer. They've gone on to do better things than I have. And that's great. I mean, I think that's wonderful. And I tell them I had nothing to do with that. They're very talented people. I just kind of, gave them tools that they could use to amplify that. And that's the way I look at mentoring is it's a tool. And I can't tell you what to do. And you shouldn't emulate me. You shouldn't do the things I do. But if I can give you a tool to be more effective, that's great. And that only amplifies your abilities to go and do things.
So what we're going to find out over the next 45 minutes, 50 minutes or so is that these docisms, they all have each have a story, and it's a teachable moment, and it may be directly involved with engineering that will help you, help me, help all of us in attacking engineering challenges and troubleshooting. But they also help us in our interpersonal relationships with other engineers and other members of the staff or other family members. So I like the fact that we're going to learn something about each of these docisms that are coming up. It's This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack. Chris Starr is my guest, and you know him very well. He's also been the co-host many, many times. And I can't, I never know how much to pay him, to be on the show as both a guest and a co-host. So maybe I should just send him a blank check and let him decide. Our show is brought to you in part by AIR, AIIR.com. And streaming these days is so important. And you're probably doing it. Are you doing it as well as you can for the least amount of money that you can that gives you a product that works and works well? Well, check out my conversation here with Ricky Lee.
Hey, it's Kirk Harnack, and I'm here with Ricky Lee, the CEO of AIR. Ricky, you guys make a fantastic automation system, but streaming is a really big deal. Tell me about streaming with AIR.
It really is. We've got a beautiful streaming platform with an incredible dashboard with fantastic analytics. And you can buy it for just $20 a month, all you can eat. No limits on bandwidth or bit rates. And you can also record shows as well. So if you like to deliver on-demand content for $20 a month, you can stream and deliver that on-demand content to an RSS feed that can feed your radio player, your mobile apps, or a podcast that people can download and enjoy.
Now, $20 a month, that must be for just some slow MP3, right?
No, MP3, AAC, and we also now support HLS, which is big in the industry right now.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. How do I start to explore or find out more about streaming through Air?
You go to air.com, AIIR.com/streaming. And from there, with a credit card, you can sign up and get started.
If you're coming to NAB, come by the Air booth. It's going to be right next door to the Max Connect booth, and I will be there. I'll be in both booths. I may just have to stretch my legs and put a foot in each booth. See you there. Thanks a lot, Ricky Lee, and everybody else at Air, AIIR.com. All right, I'm with Chris Tarr here, and we're going to talk about docisms. And Chris, we ought to just go ahead and jump right into the first one. Give our friends in the audience a taste of what you're talking about, and of course the story behind it. And if you've got a picture to go along with it, tell Suncast, and I'm sure he'll whip it up there on the screen.
You got it. Well, the first one is really a core saying that the rest of these kind of fall under that. And and it's one of my favorite sayings, and that is, and I got to look over to read it because I don't want to do it off the top of my head and screw it up. We're not going to get any more off the air than we already are. And I think that is so important. And it's good. It's a good one. And I kind of came up with that. I actually got dinged on a report, on a employee performance report. The manager wrote that they didn't think that I had enough urgency in what I did. So, for example, if a station went off the air or something broke, I didn't just drop what I was doing and run. And I think that's bad. I think that's a really bad policy to just drop and run, because you make mistakes and you quickly patch things together, and you get things that I like to call radio station permanent, which are, kind of just band-aids to a problem. And when you're off the air, it's, you're already off the air. It's not going to get any more off the air than you are. So take that extra 10 or 15 minutes and do the job properly. Take your time, breathe. You don't want to panic. And that's what I told my supervisor. I'm like, you don't want to see me running down the hall. You want me to go, okay, let me put my brain around this. Let me think about it. Let me come up with a solution, instead of just knee jerking and maybe not fixing the problem, or even worse, making the problem worse, because I'm just kind of doing whatever it takes to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And you end up going with the very first thing that you find, and that may not be an issue. So, for example, I'm going to rush and there's a breaker. I'm going to flip the breaker and run, turn and burn, get it done. And you don't really look at, why did the breaker trip? Is there a bigger issue here? We're off the air. Let me turn it on and let it trip again and see what happens. And, in the end, it actually saves time and off air problems by doing it that way. The hardest part is training everybody else around you to understand that. But the people that I've worked for have started to appreciate that, because things get done right the first time. And if it's an extra 10 minutes or 15 minutes, even a half an hour, it's worth it. So when I mentor people, what I want them to do is, I don't want them to freak out, and so many times we do that when a station is off the air, oh my God, it's da 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 da. And you tend to make mistakes and you don't think clearly, and it's just not necessary. Take your time. It's not going to get any more off the air. It already is. So, leave it off the air for a few minutes more and get the job done right. So that is kind of the core, tenet to everything I do when it comes to working with off-air situations or solving problems. It's all about being thoughtful and purposeful with what you do, rather than reactive.
And your purpose in doing this is not just a matter of form for form's sake. What are you trying to avoid by taking a thoughtful approach to what seems like a near emergency situation? And you're calming the emergency by saying, we're not going to get any more off the air than we already are. So let's work the problem. Let's not run around with our hair on fire.
Right. And work the problem is actually the next stockism. But, mentally, it puts you in the right place. And this job is stressful enough sometimes, but sometimes we put that stress on ourselves. by immediately feeling like we have to react, we're always just reacting. We're always just putting out fires. And by slowing it down and taking your time, not only are you giving yourself a chance to calm, but your heart rate goes down, your mind stops racing, your blood pressure goes down, you feel better, and you're in a much better position to solve that problem. So, it's not just a good practice for doing a job well, it's a good practice for mental health. You see a lot of engineers over time burn out, and you're going to do that if all you're doing is responding to emergencies, turn and burn, fix it, get out. And you're going to end up going back several times to fix it because you never did figure out the problem was. So, I would rather trade 10, 15, 20 minutes of off air time for, sanity's sake. So, that's that. And that ties into the next one, which I call work the problem. And I use this a lot with mentees, especially when they're working with me at a site somewhere. And that just means take a break, sit down, and think things through. When it's an emergency, you don't have as much time. But when you're just, solving, minor issues, like I had a live wire issue where, we kept having audio dropouts and things. And, you could start just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. And you might figure, you might solve it. You may not know what you did to solve it, but sit down and just look at the ceiling or whatever. And just, I find that oftentimes the best solutions come when I'm driving, actually. So,
exactly.
But,
Yeah.
But working the problem is the same way. You don't just try to fiddle with things because you're going to throw yourself off. Sit down, take a deep breath, maybe grab, a drink or something, and just noodle on it a little bit. I love using that phrase. I noodle on things. And work through that problem and just go, okay, what are the building blocks to this? And, it gives you some starting points for the next thing that we'll talk about. But it gives you some starting points. And I think I've got some pictures that go with this that are examples of not working the problem. And those are the ones that are labeled work. So if you want to load work one there, Suncast, I can talk about that. But this is a good example of what happens when you don't do that. So this is a transmitter. It's an old Nautel AM transmitter. And as you can see, it's got a problem that's not going to buff out. So the engineer for this station came into this, and it was a huge problem. However, let me see if I gotta remember what. Pardon me for one moment here. Oh yeah, there's work too. So, that was the first thing. So he replaced that one part. Just, I got to get that part on so we can go on the air. Put that part in. This happened next. So, he ended up burning it up even more. So finally, I got called in and I ordered all new parts, and we sat down and went, okay, why is this happening? We can keep throwing replacement parts at it over and over and over again, and we're never going to fix it. We're just going to have to keep coming back and doing this over and over. So, okay, now that it's done, now that this is burned up, we're not going to get any more off the air, and we need to work the problem because we're spending a lot of money. Okay, we might lose a couple of ad dollars while we're off the air, but it won't make up for the cost of this. So, it's financially reasonable to wait a little bit longer. And, we ended up tracing it back, and there was a faulty connector somewhere that was changing the impedance of the output. And I got all new parts. We put it in. It looks great, and we've never had an issue since. So that's what working the problem and, not worrying about being off the air gets you. Worrying about it and working frantically gets you this. And this was an expensive date.
If I could say something on that, the first picture or two that you showed of the burnouts, I thought, well, the transmitter wasn't designed to blow up like there must be something external that is causing this, and And, my mind
Yep.
went to reflected power or maybe an intermittent externally that the transmitter wasn't expecting. Because if everything's copacetic, that's not going to happen. And this,
So
I think this is an output network, right, on a transmitter.
Well, yeah, that's the output network, and it turns out that what it was actually out at the tower. They use a skirted tower, a skirted antenna, and that was having some issues, and that's what caused that. But again, if you just kept throwing parts at it, you'd never find that. But that's what happens. You're off the air. Okay, what part is bad? That's the thing I'm going to replace, and you never really take time to think about why is that happening.
Part of working a problem is gathering data. Gathering all the symptoms you possibly can, because oftentimes as engineers, we're told by somebody else what the symptom is, but also maybe they want to say what they think the problem is, and maybe they couldn't be more wrong about it, or maybe the symptom they're describing is how they're perceiving it, but not how an engineer might perceive it. And I just went through something today. I'm not going to name names, but I had a satellite receiver problem with a total of 5 satellite receivers, and every time we got, and there's nobody at the station that's capable of looking over things. I did get a handyman to go there and give me more accurate information as to what the symptoms were. Also had a satellite receiver vendor jump into his satellite receiver on the site and gave me new surprising information, which was it hasn't had any RF from the dish since at least February 1st. And I'm thinking, wow, here it is, March 6th. Well, the more we looked into it, at first we thought C-band interference from a 5G carrier, because this is a dish that didn't get the filter put on it. There's one ordered. It'll be at my house tomorrow. I'll be putting it on Saturday. But for whatever reason, it didn't get a filter put in. It's a small town. But the more information I got, this receiver it's been on IP backup now for a month also. And then the vendor went in and he got 90 days worth of data. And he showed me that on January 25th, the signal started going down, 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 and never came back up. Well, that was the ice storm. So was there some permanent damage done? But then I looked, a couple other of the receivers in the stack of receivers were getting RF. Okay, is there something wrong with the splitter? I thought, why don't we try just rebooting this satellite receiver that says it has no signal? We rebooted it.
Right.
Perfect signal. And that's not supposed to happen with an XDS receiver. I've never seen that happen where they were stupid until you reboot it. Oh, have you? Okay, so you got more experience. See, more data points to add. Had I known that, I might have rebooted it sooner. So the more it's working the problem, like you say, to me, a lot of times means trying to gather all the information that's pertinent to this. Just like a police officer should gather all the information in the context of the traffic stop, or the guy riding a bike away from the bank when the alarm's going off, or whatever it may be.
Well, I had an employer that drove me nuts, because we'd go off the air and he'd go, well, what do you think the problem is? I don't know. It could be one of 70 different things. I need data in order to make that educated guess, because otherwise it's just a wild guess. I don't know, tower fell. I mean, there are so many, and you go, well, what are percentages? If you're to put a percentage on and I just won't do it. It drove him nuts, because he was like, well, I just what do you think? I don't need you to be right, but what do I need data. I'm a data-driven person. I need to see what's going on. And now I don't know where we at for a break.
Oh, well, it's time for one right now. Why don't we tease what's coming up next, and we'll take our break.
Sure. Well, part of working the problem is going to be what I'm going to talk about next.
Okay. All right.
How's that for a tease?
And it has to do with maybe not going forward.
There you go.
A minute. That's right. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by the amazing people. I love these people, and you should too, at Broadcast Bionics. They're over in England, but they serve broadcasters absolutely around the world. They have some top-notch radio stations in the London area where they try out all their new ideas, and then they foist them upon the world. Well, one of their really cool things is a phone system, an on-air contesting talk show system that actually runs on a PC. It is so cool. It's called Caller One, and let's find out about it.
Caller One is the talk show system that anyone can use and everyone can afford. Live radio thrives on listener engagement, and phone calls play a crucial role by bringing real-time interaction, authenticity, and a true sense of community. But with the rising costs of traditional phone lines, broadcasters need to migrate to SIP. But this has been complex and expensive until now. Caller One makes your move to SIP easy, enabling you to save on line rental and improve call quality, while at the same time integrating seamlessly with your existing hardware and workflows. With Caller One's intuitive browser interface, you can answer, screen, and route calls to air from any device, anywhere on the network, eliminating the need for expensive, dedicated hardware. And it integrates seamlessly with the IP or analog console you already have. It's quick and easy to add notes and flags to callers. And with its built-in database, you can view call history and previous call notes all on one screen. As well as smooth call handling, Caller One records an isolated feed of the caller and presenter for every call, allowing rapid editing and repurposing of content for trails, podcasts, or social media. Flexible licensing allows you to choose 3, 6, or 12 lines, which can even be shared with a second studio. Make the switch to SIP with Caller One for a subscription that is less than the price of the daily coffee run. Get started today at bionics.co.uk/caller1.
Check out that website, bionics.co.uk/caller1. Appreciate Broadcast Bionics and all the cool things they make, including virtual rack. By the way, we're going to have another look at that coming up at NAB here in April. We'll see how that has progressed and what's new from Broadcast Bionics. It's This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, along with, you know him, you love him. Who couldn't possibly love him? Even his dogs love him. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Tarr is with us.
I don't know if I'm universally loved, but, I'll take it.
This problem I'll let you tease that in just a second, but work the problem. One of the things that drives me nuts, because it's not helpful, is when something goes wrong and a similar thing went wrong before, then it's as if I'm stupid. The suggestion is made to me, well, it's probably this. And I got to point out, well, no, it's probably not that, even though that's what it was last time. But to make you happy, we'll check the thing you're talking about first. And if that's it, great, problem solved. But if that's not it, and I don't think it is, then we're wasting our time. And well, you have your own methods that you're going to talk about. It's often not the thing that it was last time. But of course, engineers have some intuition about, it probably is that thing, because that's a weak link. Like, hey, that second phase of my 3-phase from the power company, they need to replace that transformer because it goes out every now and then. That kind of thing.
Sure. And, there are things like that come up that you just know what it is and you take care of it and life's good.
Yeah.
But troubleshooting is becoming a lost art. And for some reason, I've been told I'm really good at it. And it's, the whole solving problem things. And I just admit it's something that I'm pretty good at. And what I teach my mentees is, in order to solve a problem, you need to know kind of what the end result is supposed to be and work backwards. And how that started for me was actually in early on in my career, and it had nothing to do with fixing a technical issue. I had a program director come in and say, I need you to do this and this and this. And it made no sense to me. And I kept saying, well, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that? And I learned that really what I need to do is ask, what is the end result? What is it supposed to be doing? And then going backwards step by step to figure that out. Troubleshooting is essentially the same way. And so when you find a piece of equipment that's broken, you walk in and the transmitter's just dead and there's not even a clue what it might be. Well, you you think in reverse. You go, okay, there's supposed to be stuff coming off of the antenna. That's not happening. Okay. So we know that the antenna is fed by the transmission line. Is that doing anything? Okay, that's not. So what feeds the transmission line? Well, the output of the transmitter, the output network, if in an AM or with the FM, it's the cavity, whatever, combiner. Okay, is it going that far? And okay, I know that the transmitter has power, it's turning on. So, and that's kind of how you look at it. If you come in and the transmitter's dead, you go, okay, there's power not getting, there's, no power getting somewhere. But anytime you run into a problem like that, it's really easy to get overwhelmed. I was working with a mentee of mine. I called her the unicorn. She's a woman. She's just super smart. And, but she fell into that same thing that a lot of people do. They walk into a problem and they immediately get overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, there's so many things it could be, and I don't know where to start. And it's a good place to start. You go, okay, well, what is it supposed to be doing? And when does it stop doing it? Go backwards. If you go forwards, you're never going to solve it because, there may not be anything that's working right. So, by going in reverse, you can trace it back and eventually like you go, oh, okay, I found once that there was an interlock because I went, okay, the transmitter is being told not to turn on. I can tell because it's just not responding to the HV going on. So there's an interlock somewhere. That's what it is. We've worked backwards and we've gotten to the point where the HV isn't coming on. So we know the filaments are on. We see the readings. So and the control itself is not turning on. So it's like it's turning on and tripping or turning on and doing nothing. It's not turning on. You cannot turn this thing on. Well, that tells me that it's an interlock, that something is telling it to stay off. What's telling it to stay off?
Right.
And then you work through that segment. And eventually you go, oh, okay, there's this whatever interlock that we, is burned up or is not connecting or whatever. So thinking in reverse is just a really easy way for two things. One, to actually track down the problem. But for my mentees, I tell them it makes it a whole lot less intimidating because you're focusing on one section at a time, very manageable pieces. And, you're not going, oh man, it could be anything, and that's the worst thing because that's when you start to freak out and go, I can't do this. This is too much. By breaking it down into manageable pieces, you can solve one thing at a time. And I actually do that in my mentoring of leaders and people in business and things like that on how to approach any problem. If you look at a big problem, you're never going to get started with it because you're so intimidated and you're thinking of all the different things involved. Break it into pieces and solve it one piece at a time. Break it into something manageable. And again, it's work the problem. Break it up into chunks, into easy to digest pieces, and then work through each one and then tie them together at the end. Because oftentimes we get intimidated and we don't start, or we start doing the wrong things because we want it to be the easy answer. So we're sitting there messing with testing fuses and testing breakers because those are the easiest things to go first. But if there's not enough data to tell you that, you're just wasting time. And you're just kind of, again, throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Break it up into small pieces. And I would tell that to anybody looking for advice on how to deal with dealing up or down in your company, and you're dealing with things that come up in business that are very difficult, and you're just not sure where to go with it. Start, pick a place to start and work at one little solution at a time. And eventually, before you know it, all those little wins, you've solved the problem. So thinking in reverse is kind of that same thing. Not only does it make troubleshooting easier, but it breaks it into manageable chunks and kind of takes the overwhelmingness out of it. You're in control of the problem versus the problem controlling you. So that's really where that goes.
Your phrase, just think in reverse. And I think there's a way, at least for me, that gets implemented. Maybe it works for you or some of your mentees too, or other engineers. And that is, know what a system or a transmitter or an audio processor or whatever it is, know what it looks like when it's behaving correctly. Know
Right.
generally where the meters. And back when we had a lot of tube transmitters, I would take a little China marker pencil from the studio, and I'd go mark, on the transmitter typically where the meters are, and that way I could send somebody else to the transmitter site and have them pretty quickly identify. Well, the grid current meter is nowhere near that mark that you made. And I might have to remind them, well, turn the selector knob to grid current, and then now see what it says then. Right? But if you went to a transmitter site and you're off the air, but you go look at the transmitter again, let's say it's a tube transmitter because that's what we all learned on, and the plate voltage is proper, maybe it's a little high, but the plate current is a fifth of what it should be, and the grid current is zero or next to nothing. I'm thinking of a grounded grid transmitter. Well, the high voltage is on, the tube is on, but it's not being fed any signal or not enough signal to amplify and make a signal on the air. So, know what. I do think you have to have at least a fundamental, not necessarily a detail, but a fundamental understanding of how the systems you're working on work. And that, of course, that comes by looking at them when they're working right and getting to know that feeling and that look. So when there is something wrong, oh, the plate voltage is zero. Okay, that might be the interlock thing. And you reminded me, many transmitters had an interlock diagram as part of the front panel. And they would show you what wasn't working, at least a master intercom light, or they would show you the back door's open, or the blower's not blowing, or whatever it may be. So that was helpful. Some transmitters that should have had such diagrams didn't. And so, you go, it's not coming on. Must be an interlock, right? And it could be any of several things. Go ahead.
A real good example of that is a CCA transmitter where there is a capacitor that it works as a warm-up timer. And the capacitor charges, and when it's fully charged, you can turn on, the plate will come on. You can turn the plate on. It won't turn on until that capacitor is charged up. Well, those capacitors go bad, and there's not an interlock light. So if you don't know about that particular little capacitor, you could be sitting there all day because it looks like it's supposed to be working. And again, I found that out because of that issue. It's something is not telling it to turn on. And I traced it back to that one capacitor, and actually in a pinch, I just bypassed it and it turned on. So, that's another great example of this. Is yesterday I was working with that same mentee, that woman, and she has to wire up a remote control for the first time. And that looks really intimidating. There's a lot of wires. So I said, let's just take one. Let's take one connection and work through it in its entirety. And pretty soon it's going to make sense to you. And the rest of them are just going to fall into place. And that's what we did. We just took one chunk at a time. And I said, okay, really all you're doing is you're creating a loop with a hole in it, and you're going to close the loop. So, put the loop together and know that when the relay on the remote control closes, that completes the circuit and does what you want it to do. So, by breaking that down, instead of saying, well, here are the pinouts on the thing on the one side, here are the pinouts on the other, and one goes to one, that's pretty intimidating. By breaking it down to, this is what they do, each part. And here's, just an example of one, and do that 5 times and you're done. And it was great because you could hear the wheels turning, and she's like, oh, that makes total sense. And I thought that was great. I mean, I think that's a win, when you get somebody to do that. So
Yeah.
that's really, that was that whole, again, think in reverse, break the problem down, go one at a time, just be very thoughtful and methodical in what you do. And it's hard if you don't have that kind of mind. I'm very, for better or for worse, I'm more of a robot than a person sometimes. And I think very logically, I think linearly. So it's really easy for me to solve problems because that's how my brain works, is just step by step by step, block by block by block. So even when it's something that I've never played with before, I pretty quickly figure it out because that's how my mind works. I'm going, okay, for this to work, it needs to do this. So we got to figure out how it does that. And, self-taught myself a lot of things because of that. I break it down and I solve that puzzle. I go, okay, this is what it's supposed to do. Well, how does it do that? How's it supposed to work? So again, that's just one of those, one of those things that is an encouragement more than anything to just slow it down. And that's kind of all of these you'll see is all about slowing down and taking your time and, clearing your head and working through it step by step by step. And you turn big problems into little problems and you just solve each little problem and it all falls into place.
Interestingly,
so that's really,
go ahead.
No, I said that's really what thinking in reverse is all about.
We were talking about tube transmitters because we grew up with that. We grew up troubleshooting those. We kind of knew what the meters had to say and what the lights had to say. But modern solid state transmitters oftentimes don't have much in the way of internal interlocks. There isn't a cabinet door to open. I guess on bigger ones there is. Yes, got that. But oftentimes you open it up and it's still safe to run because there's nothing exposed like there was in a tube transmitter. But on a solid state transmitter, there's often an external interlock that must be closed. And that's for, if you want to hook up something else to it, like a coax switch. And so, you get a new transmitter. I had a new Nautel one time, wouldn't come on. And, maybe there's an interlock. So I go look up I got to short these pins together. Good thing I bought that little adapter board to go on the back of the connector on the back of the transmitter. And I made a little wire jumper and voila, it worked. I didn't have anything external that needed to be part of an interlock circuit. Hey, Chris, we got to take a quick break here, but you're up, so stand by here. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends at Angry Audio. Angry Audio, they make a lot of different processors now because in coordination with Cornelius Gould, we all know Corny, we love him. He's been on the show several times. Corny has an amazing ear and mind to process audio really appropriately. I mean, not too much, not too little, just right. And it started with Corny at a young age. And there's another TWiRT episode where he talks about this. But one thing that Corny really is good at is microphone processing. And Chris, I hope you're prepared to talk a little bit about a Chameleon mic processor like the Smooth or what's the other one? The Rebel, Smooth or the Rebel. What you got to talk about?
I sure can talk about that. I've got one sitting right there in front of me. I love it. Basically, as the story goes, Catfish was trying to come up with perhaps doing a mic processor, but he was dissatisfied with all of the knobs and how complicated they were to work. And in fact, you could take two mic processors, set them exactly the same, and they both sounded different every time. So Catfish was sitting there trying to solve that problem, and he said to Corny, why are there so many knobs and tweaks and all of this? And Corny very simply said, each microphone sounds different. Each brand and model of microphone has a different characteristic. So in order to get them to sound the same, each one has to be tweaked differently. And Catfish kind of sat there and then had an idea and said, what if we knew what microphone was going to get plugged into it? Well, that changed the game because now you know what's coming into it. You know what the parameters are going to be. And you can, preset a lot of those parameters to be optimal for that microphone. And then you only have to do little tweaks to make it sound really good. And these sound fantastic because of that, because it takes a lot of the guesswork out of kind of the big broad stroke adjustments. So you're not having to really deal with attack, release, gating, and things like that. You do have some control over that, but the broad strokes have been taken care of for you. It sounds great right out of the box. When I got mine, I plugged it in before I adjusted anything and went, wow, this sounds really good. Then I dove in to the few controls that it has, and you're going to see that in a second here as it scrolls up on the screen. There are just a few controls and adjustments that you can make that do make a difference. You can tailor it to your sound. So, there's a little bit of an EQ to it. There's a drive level, which kind of determines what the amount of compression is going to be. They have a really nifty control, which is almost like a room size control. It's a gate, but it works like no other gate I've ever heard. It really does a great job of just transparently getting rid of background noise. That's one of my favorite things because in my basement here in my basement office, there's a lot of just ambient noise. And I was able to tune that out pretty quickly with this device. So definitely, it's much better at doing its job than, I won't knock the 286S, but the 286S, again, is made for a wide range of things. So it's a jack of all trades, master of none, as I like to say. And you can see here, there's very limited controls on it. And it's all you need. It'll take you 10 minutes to get the sound that you're looking for. And it is a big, big, big sound. So check it out. I promise you, if you have a studio and you want to really up your microphone processing game, buy these. And with the same microphones in the studio and a set of these, it's going to sound fantastic. Everything's going to be consistent. It's going to sound big, and everybody's going to sound good. So check it out, angryaudio.com. Check out your local broadcast dealer. See if you can get one out and try it out. I think once you do it, you're going to keep it because they're great. angryaudio.com. Get angry today.
And who doesn't like lobster with soft drawn hot butter on it? Well, like Angry Audio says, imagine your voice dipped in butter. Butter.
Oh, they sound great. They really do.
Hey, our show is also brought to you by Max Connect. Yeah, this company right here on the monitor behind me. And a product they've got that is amazing, that's so important now that engineers are taking care of so many radio stations. Sometimes you don't have a staff member listening to a station because you got, 12 stations between two markets that are close by. Well, this product called the RMT 416. This is an amazing one rack unit tuner that you can stuff this thing full of receivers, AM, FM, weather band. Also, there's an HD version as well, and you can get up to 16. Yeah, 16 receivers, and you don't have to get 16. You can just get 4 or 8. Or 12 or 16. I've got one here in the office. I'd love to show it to you, but it's too far away from the desk right now. I'm going to be doing a couple of videos about this product, the RMT 416, and it is just amazing. In fact, Suncast, if you'll scroll down a little bit, we can have a look at the user interface. You can set up, what I love about this user interface on this thing is you can look at the RDS data, RDS, or in the US, we do call it RBDS. There you go. Just coming into view at the bottom there is a look at the controls. You can tune each tuner with the on-screen controls. You can see, and I realize that it's kind of small here. You're not going to be able to see it real well, but you can see the RDS data and make sure that that's happening correctly. That's amazing. Or for HD, the PSD, the program associated data that goes along with that. You can also, you get a light for am I in stereo? Do I have a good signal? Is there audio there? And then you can listen to any of the tuners. Has built-in IceCast server, so you can listen to anything that's coming in to the tuner and being properly tuned. Just so cool. Of course, you can label the tuners. You don't have to have them labeled, tuner 1 through tuner 16. You can label them with what station they are or what antenna they're on. So if you're listening to different stations, it is so cool. And look on the screen right now. You can monitor all that with SNMP. So there's a good deal of automation available in monitoring these things. This is the Max Connect RMT 416. It uses these amazing tuner cards from the brilliant geniuses over at Audio Science. And Max Connect has incorporated these together in a 1RU package. Again, it's just brilliant. I got mine late last week, got it set up, and I've been listening to it and observing all the indications that it can give you. What a blessing. What an amazing tool. Check it out from Max Connect, the website, maxconnect.com. I know it's spelled funny, so of course there's a link in the show notes. It's Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tarr here. Chris, let's jump right to our next topic. And I like this one. I'll set you up because I have thought I got a problem to solve at a transmitter site. It's going to involve, let's see, 2 relays, a box, these different connectors coming in. I got to make sure the relays will pass FM composite. And we want to have an indication on the front panel as to which receiver we're on. It's all these things. And I've started putting together a list of parts, and then I'm thinking, I wonder if there's any better way. Because by the time, if I were charging by the hour, this box is going to be $1,000. So, Chris, what's your answer? What's your phrase about that? Your docism.
My docism for that, and I love it. It works great, and it gets people thinking. It's, they make those. They even ship them to your door. And what that means is so many times we spend hours trying to put together something with off the shelf parts. And, part of us enjoys that. But in reality, it's not worth it. They make them. You can get them at your door the next day. Just buy what you need and put it in. A great example of this, and Suncast, if you want to put the picture of the relay box on there, I don't remember what I labeled that, but I had there it is. So I had a transmitter that needed an IPA and an exciter. So I used a NICOM transmitter to do it. The problem with those NICOM transmitters is they require a relay to be constantly held in order to stay on the air, in order for the transmitter to become unmuted. So,
Okay.
we're running into this issue. We had an ARC Plus that supposedly you can set it to do a close and hold, but it was an electrical relay, so it didn't always work. So I wanted a magnetic relay that would switch and be done. Didn't need any more power to stay. It just was magnetic, and it would flip the contactor back and forth. Well, I had one of my engineers come up with some big, design breadboard thing with several relays and spent a lot of hours on it. And I was very polite about it. And I'm like, that's really neat. That's great. But here's a relay that will do the same thing, $35 at Amazon. You can get it overnight, put it in, it's documented. We don't have to do any kind of documentation. Cheap enough where I'm going to order two. I'll have one on the shelf in case the other one fails. And I was able to program it in with the Burke to automatically turn on with the filament. So it was ready to go. And if we weren't using that transmitter, it was a backup, it would shut itself off. It would mute when you turn the transmitter off. $35, problem solved. You didn't have to create anything. You didn't have to settle for things because this is all you had on hand or whatever. And kind of what that gets to. And another example was I had a site where we had a failure. What it was it had a super old extension cord, started to fray. It's like, they make extension cords, just replace it. I had seen that it had been repaired a couple of times where it was cracking and they took electrical tape and wrapped it around. I'm like, $10, So, that's just one of those things where, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. And so that's really what that means. And I love using that. It's like, they make those, they even ship to your door. So that's what that is.
It's gotten to the point it's gotten to the point where when I'm looking for a solution, I got to say, one of my first stops is Amazon, and I try to figure out what to search on Amazon to see if anybody makes this thing. I noticed that in his column a couple weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, John Bissett talked about this little thing called the Shelly Uni. And I haven't hooked it up yet, but he talked very glowingly about it. I got to get one of those. It's like $18. Okay, I'm going to get and it's a Wi-Fi thing, and it has a built-in web server, and it can control 2 relays, and it has a temperature sensor, and it has 2 digital inputs for, are these things, sensing on or off, and it's got 1 analog input. So you can hook several sensors or switches or things or light bulbs up to this and control it remotely, observe and it's $18. Now it doesn't have a case. You can 3D print a case, and I think people are selling those online. It's just that. But maybe. So this is my kind of fun project. Now I couldn't possibly build that from scratch, but to buy a less than $20 module and give me something that frankly used to cost in a 1 RU box used to cost $300-400 to monitor temperature in a server room or something like that. This can do that. Now, I don't want to make it look ugly. I don't want to take a whole weekend to put this together, but still, the engineer in me wants to play. So I'll be playing.
Well, I have another example that's kind of funny about that. And Suncast, you want to throw that picture up? This was at a station that we acquired, and I went on a tour, and I pulled that out from the back of the rack by their remote control. this was their safety thing because they didn't realize, I guess, that slave relays were a thing. So they tied 120 volt relays right into the remote control, which were exposed with terminal blocks. So I was like, I was almost
wow.
disgusted by that. It made me angry. They make slave
Wow.
relays. You can just, take the high voltage, lock it up somewhere, and bring in 12-volt relays to do the job. So again, that's one of those, times where you go, they make those. So we'll move on to the next one. This one is it sounds dramatic, but it's really not. And
Yeah.
I say failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. And
Okay.
you think about that and you go, oh, that's a lot of pressure, that you can't fail. And what that means simply is that, sometimes we don't have the luxury of walking away. If a transmitter's off the air, you can't just go, "Ah, I don't know, I'm done. I tap out. Um, and what that means is sometimes you've got to be okay with doing temporary things if that's what the solution is. I had one where I literally used a pen cap to keep a control relay open until I was able to get another one,
Yeah.
and because that's what I had, and failure wasn't an option. I couldn't just go up, need a relay, guess I'm stuck. I'm like, okay, if I got to hold this relay open, the little tab on a pen cap is just enough to wedge that in there and keep it open. So, it's just a matter of don't give up. Don't, it doesn't mean stress yourself out over it. Use those other sayings to get you there. Work the problem. Know that you're not going to get any more off the air. Think in reverse. And all of a sudden, when it says failure is not an option, it's not as intimidating as it sounds. It just means, I use this other one too. I didn't list this as a docism. I'm smarter than it. And so are you. You're smarter than the machine. So given enough time, you'll solve the problem. But you won't solve it if you give up. If you just go, it's just too hard. Now, that's not to say that you may run into something where you've got to call some help or, something like that, because you really don't know how to solve the problem. I run into that more often than I'd like to admit. But
Yeah.
I know where to get the answer. I know who to call to get the answer. And sometimes we stop before that step. We just go, it's never going to get fixed. And you walk away, or you go, I'm going to deal with it tomorrow. Or, with some things you can do that. But in a case where it really is a critical thing, it's true. Failure isn't an option. You don't have the option of going, I don't want to do this. Your job is to do this, and if you can't do this, it's explainable. Not everybody knows everything, but everybody knows something. So, you might not be able to do it, but that's when you start getting on the phone and reaching out to lifelines and go, hey, I've got this problem. Do you know anything about it? And eventually you'll find somebody to help you. And that works in reverse. I've helped other people with things that they didn't understand, and I was able to help them through that. And so, I've got this stable of people that we kind of help each other out, and it's been great. So that's really what that means. It's just one of those, again, where, if you do these other things, failure is not an option. It's not a stressful thing because you've gone through all of these other steps.
I might ask, when is it okay to walk away? And my first answer would be, well, if there's any way you can put a backup on the air, if it's 2:00
sure.
in the morning,
and that's
and you put the backup on at 7:30 when the problem started, that at least takes the pressure off having to fix the big transmitter when you're tired and
right.
sleepy and tech support is closed and that stuff.
Right. And I don't consider that a failure. I don't consider putting something temporary on as a failure. That's not. You're back on the air. That's not a failure. I'm talking about those things that are like you have no audio or your audio is unlistenable, or, those are things where you can't just walk away and leave it. You've got to come up with, even if it's okay, I've got an iPod and I'm going to plug it into the transmitter just to get audio on. I had an audio processor die at my last job, and I didn't have one handy right away, and we were silent. I was able to route raw audio into the transmitter. It didn't sound great, but we were back, and it bought me time to go get the right stuff. So when I mean failure, I don't mean, oh man, this is a mess, and but we're on. I'm gonna deal with it tomorrow. That's smart. You should always rest up and make sure you have what you need and you're ready to go. But what I'm talking about are those problems where you really are in a bad place and you need to figure it out. And sometimes that means being unconventional. Just doing what you have to do to get things back on to buy you that time to work the problem and think in reverse and do all of
Yeah.
those sorts of things.
What if I suggested to you that my backup STL is a portable FM radio tuned to my nearest K-Love station?
I've done things like that. I have done things like that where I've used a tuner plugged in. I lost a feed to an HD channel, so
Yeah.
that fed a translator. I took the translator audio, fed that into a tuner, fed the tuner into the HD. So
Yeah.
until we could get it resolved. So again, if it works, it's not wrong. But it gives you that time then to work the problem and think in reverse and do all of those things you need to do. Really the moral of all of those is slow down, give yourself time to think. It's another one that I used to say, and I feel bad saying it now, but it's radio. Nobody dies. It's nobody's going to lose a life because you're off the air. And so you don't need to treat it that way. You really don't. Take your time, be safe. Because that's the other thing is when we're in a rush, we do dumb things. And I did early in my career. I almost killed myself because I did a stupid thing because I was in a hurry. So I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So, those are the sayings, the docisms that take you through the job. The very last docism I have is probably the most important in my mind, which is let's take the victory lap.
Let's
Oh, yeah,
save
got a break. We'll talk about that for
one more break, and we'll make this the last thing in the show. We'll carry everybody over our last break. This week in Radio Tech, Chris Doc Tar is our guest today, and talking about docisms. These are all learnable, teachable moments, but phrases that are easy to remember and have a little humor and a little meaning to them as well. Our show is brought to you in part by Broadcasters General Store and an amazing product, and it saved us again. I'm telling you, you need these things. It's the back UPS from Henry Engineering. The back UPS gives you power options for your equipment that you may not, you probably don't have now. You've probably got some equipment in your racks that has 2 power supplies or 2 power inputs, and that's great. You have a strip of UPS power in the rack, and you have a strip of non-UPS power in the rack, and that's fine. But what about all your equipment that only has 1 power input, 1 power supply? I've got an Omni 11, great processor, but it has 1 power supply. I've got an EAS box that has 1 power supply. I've got Ethernet switches that, even though they're kind of expensive, they have 1 power supply, 1 power input. So how would you keep those things running if your UPS dies? And they do. Over the years, I've probably had as much trouble with reliable power out of a UPS that I've had out of the commercial power. And even if your UPS doesn't fail you, you still got to replace the batteries or test them from time to time. And so you're going to need a way to switch power. Well, and you can do all this now without going off the air. The back UPS has 2 power inputs on the back of it. One of them is input from the UPS. That's on the left in your picture here. The other one is input from the line or the commercial power that's not on a UPS, or at least maybe it's on a different UPS. Point is, you got 2 sources of power there, and the back UPS normally stays on the input from the UPS. But if that one gets squirrely or goes away, it instantly, and I mean in a few milliseconds, I've had computers not reboot at all during the changeover, and it'll switch over to input from the line source. And that lets your UPS fail. It lets you change the batteries in it, whatever. I've got servers in racks that have 2 power supplies, but I've got workstations that are doing the play out. In other words, they're critical for being on the air with our radio stations, and they have 1 power supply. Well, this will switch you between the 2. You put one of these in each rack. Each one will handle about 15 amps of power. If you have more than that, we'll divide it up and get 2 of them. You can also get remote control information from the back UPS, so you can see what is what state that it's in if you need to see that remotely. We had a UPS fail up in Maui on the top of Mount Haleakala, and I got to tell you that's almost a day's journey to get up there, do something, and head back home. That is a long way up Mount Haleakala, and we had a UPS fail, and the back UPS absolutely saved our bacon. Love this thing from Henry Engineering, and of course you can get it from Broadcasters General Store. Their website's great now. It's bgs.cc, bgs.cc, or you can call them at 352-622-7700. It's right there on the website too. So if you need to talk to somebody, I love these folks. They're really good, friendly on the phone, and they have, as I've always said for years now, sharp pencils on their pricings. Check them out. Thanks a lot, Broadcasters General Store, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Chris, spotlight's back on you, buddy. We got one more docism to talk about. Let's hit it up.
And this one is probably the most important of all of these. And I say, let's take the victory lap. When you get through all of this and everything is settled, everything's working, take the time to celebrate it. And as many people know, I am a sucker for iced coffee. I drink it all the time. And, in fact, oftentimes, my former boss would use that as an incentive to get me to do something. He's like, hey, I'm here with your iced coffee. But whatever your ritual is, take time to appreciate what you've done and celebrate that, because you did something good. You did something big and you solved a problem. And that's great. I mean, some people go, oh, it's my job. No, yeah, but it is something that you conquered and you should celebrate that. And, when you do that, it reminds you that all of this is a process, and it's a process that's worth it. And it kind of, you look at that as the victory lap or whatever, and you go, oh, I figured this out. I've done it. I get to move on. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take some time and just decompress and enjoy it and realize that I've done this. So that is, I'm always big on that. Don't just lock the door and go home. Take a moment and just go, hey, yeah, I did it. And celebrate that, because we need to celebrate our victories. That's how it all kind of makes it worthwhile. There's nothing better than pressing the on button on a piece of equipment and have it light up and work when it didn't work before. And again, I mean, there's nothing beats that feeling. Take the time and enjoy it. So, all of this stuff is kind of a final note. It applies to everything you do in life. It's all about attitude. It's all about positivity. It's all about, seeing the good in others, realizing that we all have these skills. We were designed very well by God to do these things. It's just unlocking that potential. And as a mentor, that's my job is I don't give you skills. I don't, I'm not any smarter than anybody else. I'm just good at unlocking those skills that you already have and knowing that they're there and that they exist and that you should embrace them. And that's for anything in life, whether it's engineering or building widgets or whatever it is you do. Approach it with the attitude of, I get to do this. It's not that I have to do it. I get to do it and I enjoy doing it. And, using all of these tips and everything to just make it more enjoyable and less like work. And always remember that people are inherently good. And when you build a team as a mentor or a leader, and you build that team, surround yourself with good people and let them be good people and show them how to be good people. And you'll be amazed with the success you get, not only from them, but for yourself as well. And with success comes more success, and you build on that. And all of these steps help you get there. I mean, you'll learn about the job as you're thinking in reverse and working the problem. You learn every day. I still learn. I read every day voraciously. And I just like to learn. I like to know new things. And so this is a good way to do that, as well as, again, maybe you can be a mentor. SBE has a mentorship program. They're always looking for mentors. Maybe you have something to offer. To me, I kind of look at that as my victory lap. I've been so blessed over the years for all the things that I've been able to do and all of the people who've helped me to that. To be able to do that is great, and to be able to pay it back. So anybody who wants these, I know Kirk has them. Maybe you can put them on the site, or you can email me and I'll set you up. But just it's all about attitude.
I'm gonna take what you wrote and put them in the show notes, so people will have a little list of the things that you've talked about right there. And hey, if you don't know this, Chris and everybody, we do repost little short sections of this whole podcast most every week. Once in a while, it gets done late. I won't say it doesn't get done, but it gets done a little bit late. But sometime we do try to post a little best of snippets the week after. So if you can't devote an hour or an hour and 10 minutes, as we're up to right now, to the show, well, you can watch for those snippets. Appreciate if you subscribe to us, though. That'd be great on YouTube or on Facebook. That would be fantastic. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your docisms with us. They've been hard won, hard fought, a lot of experience, a lot of challenges, difficulties, maybe even some blood, sweat, and tears, and hurt, pinched fingers over the years in coming up with things.
I've earned the gray hair. I've earned the gray hair and all the scars.
There you go. All right. Chris, thanks again for being with us. Don't go away. We got to get your picture. And our show next week, we're going to be looking at a real historical transmitter site, KDKA. Brian Kirkin is going to be taking us through KDKA, and also Matt Leitner. You know that name. He's kind of a stalwart in the industry, is famous for refurbishing older gear. Matt Leitner and Brian Kirkin are both with us next week. We got to run. Thanks a lot to Suncast for producing today's show. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.